September 2017, Mr. Bay had the distinct pleasure of interviewing my sister, Thabi Stuart. She was known as Janet to most, Thabi to some, and JJ to even fewer. During this conversation, he focused on her childhood and how her past pain motivated her to be the caring, loving, and sensitive woman of faith she purposed herself to be. I have to warn you that it's an emotionally charged interview. I myself had to look away sometimes. You may find that there are times you want to smile, cry, and maybe revisit even a couple of times to understand the complexities of my sister, Thabi Stuart.
Do you see yourself as the family historian?
Not really. I know a little bit about things that happened here and there, but I wouldn't say. Mm-hmm.
So, but you've unearthed a lot about the family history. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what led you to want to learn more about your family?
I think, I don't know, there's just a single thing, but just an inner desire to know, like, there's more to me than the person that's just standing here. And actually, I've seen on the movies especially that a lot of families are going back and they're able to trace where they came from. And we've just heard bits and pieces. You know, your grandparents are from South Africa and I'm back here in South Africa. And yeah, I think just a natural curiosity that was it. And also I think more importantly, my children, they come from a very big family on my father's side, but we also have a very rich history on our side. And I'd like for them to know both, you know, because I think that going forward, it's nice to be able to look back and know, you know, where your roots are from. And that was it, yeah.
How much would you say that do you think that you've done an adequate job of teaching your kids about your, you know, your mother and your father's side of the family?
No, I haven't. I've actually, after Mom passed, I've actually started writing a book called Remembering Mom, because I started it more for myself because there are lots of little things that I realized had gathered up and become big things. And when Mom passed, there were these huge things that I was now looking at and saying, oh, this is because of Mom, this is because of Mom. And I didn't want to lose that. And my children they knew my mother, they could identify her. They didn't have a lot of time spent with her. And I wanted them to know more about her. So that's when I started this thing, Remembering Mom, the kind of person she was. And then that got me like going back a bit more to say there's more to this and there's more to this. Yeah.
So before we get into your remembrances of your mother and your father, let's go back to the beginning. When you were born, where were you born?
I was born in Bulawayo.
And what happened, what do you know of the environment that existed when you were born? What was it like in Bulawayo at that time?
Actually, I don't have any memories of Bulawayo.
Any stories that...
Nah, I don't. But what I do remember is, I remember being in Gweru in Sugamini. I think my memories start from there because I understand Mom and Dad had gone to the UK and I was what we call a musha child, mntwana wekhaya. I grew up with my grandparents. They were my parents at the time. Those are my early memories of my grandfather tying me on the back of his bicycle to go to the clinic for jabs, or going to church on his bicycle, or, you know, just daily memories. I just remember being in Gweru, being in Sugamini. Those are my early memories. I was with my grandparents. And then when I was old enough to go to school, grade 1, which would have been about 6, 7 years old, my aunt, Tete Maimsipa, came to get me. And I stayed with her when I did my grade 1, which is funny because my husband says to me, why do you call Maimsipa Tete Maimsipa, but you call Auntie Adelaide Tete Adi? And it's just something I do naturally, Tete Maimsipa and Tete Adi. But when I think of it, Tete Maimsipa, Tete because she's my aunt, but Mai because she played a mothering role. And like I said, my husband was saying to me, oh, why do you differentiate between the two? Because there's Tete Modi and Tete Adelaide, and that's their rightful names because they're my father's sisters. But when you go to Maimsipa, it's Tete Maimsipa. So like I said, I hadn't really given it conscious thought, but she was a mother figure because I grew up with the boys. I was in her house. I used to go to the same school that she went to. She mothered me. So that's just sort of like slipped in. So that's why she gets Tete Maimsipa and the others are just Tete. Yeah.
So help me understand this. Your parents got together. They produced you.
Mm-hmm.
They made the decision to move to the UK.
Yeah.
They made the decision to leave you in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Why did they make the decision? Because you were so young at that time. It wasn't as if you were so connected to a school, because you wouldn't have been of school age at that time. Is that correct?
No, I wouldn't. I was young.
Right.
Yeah.
So they made the decision to move to the UK probably because they didn't have the means to bring you along.
Yeah.
Then they have 2 other children.
Yeah.
Help me. In retrospect, how do you feel about that?
I think I understand that they had to, that it made sense at the time. I think it's kind of sore for me. Yeah.
I get it. So after 8 years, they bring you over, and then what about the relationship that you had with your 2 new sisters that you're just now meeting?
I think it was a bit...
It's okay. Let's go back to my my question in terms of when you finally came 8 years after your birth to the UK. What was your relationship like with your sisters?
It was horrible.
How so?
Because I think for me it was a new culture. Everything was a shock, and everything was different. And I was young, it took a while for me to understand. And I think naturally, because Tembians they're close, and it was them for a long time, so they didn't know who I was, and I didn't know who they were. And trying to mesh as a family, we came from different backgrounds, so it was horrible.
How long? So when you came to the UK, how long were you in the UK before you guys moved back?
I think 4 years, maybe just under 4 years, and then we went back. Yeah.
Okay. So you came at 8, 4 years later, so you would have been around 12 or so.
Yeah.
So you would have started with the school system here.
Yes.
And then so that would have been your first. Had you started school? Did you
I had started school. I remember, because I've got memories. My aunt, Maimsipa, used to teach at a primary school. And I remember I'd started grade 1 there because she was teaching domestic science. And I have memories of going to her classroom at break time and getting some milk and cookies from her. So I had started school, yes.
And so when you came to the UK, you would have been enrolled in school again?
Yeah.
And so how was that transition to go from one system of a school system and then move to a European school system or the UK school system?
It was difficult. It wasn't easy. I know, like, towards the end of primary school here, I had some friends. But yeah, there were lots of bumps on the roads. And also you must remember, I remember after I came, I had a bad dream. It sticks out. I had a nightmare, and I think there was a war the war back home was going on. And it must have been on the news a lot, or it was on my mind. And I remember distinctly having a nightmare about the war back home. And I went to my parents' room. I knocked and I said, I can't sleep. I had a bad dream. And I think Mom said, oh, do you want to come and sleep with us? I was just so alien because I was like, no. I didn't know that I could do that with them. I didn't have that feeling that if I slept with them, I'd be comforted. I just told them. But, when they said, like, you can come and sleep in here, I was like, no, I don't want to do that, Whereas naturally, as a parent, if you have, I think that's how you comfort your children when they've had a bad dream. But I didn't expect that from them. And I was not affronted, but I just couldn't find myself, doing that.
How do you think your grandparents would have reacted to you coming to them saying that you had a bad dream?
I would have slept in the room with them. My grandmother would have put a cans on the floor. That was fine. I could do that.
So, which brings the question, how did you view your parents after 8 years of not knowing them? So, how did you view the relationship when you got reacquainted with them?
It was very stilted. I think it was stilted. And it took a long time for me to actually make a good connection with them. And that actually translates to me, even with my own children. I've got an adopted child. Nicole. She's my baby now, but her dad and my husband were brothers, and he passed and the mother passed, and she basically grew up in our house with my kids. And naturally, when both parents were late, she became our baby, and we had Nicole, funny enough, from roughly about the same age that I was left behind. She came to us when she was in grade 1, and she just became part of our household. And when we moved to South Africa, my kids, which was not a problem, the documentation was in order, so they went to join their father. But with Nicole, we had trouble getting her passports because her parents were late, and we're still in this process of legalizing her as our daughter. So we had all sorts of problems, and as a result of that, she had to stay here, even though her brother and sisters, she knows them, Joshua and Georgia, had gone across. And I wouldn't go. I didn't want to leave her behind.
Because you can identify with her struggles as right. How do you think you dealt with, how did you deal with having to relive that or relive those memories with Nicole? How did you cope?
I did it at the drop of a hat, because I know what it feels like. And even like with the hugs and things like that, I hug my children all the time. My daughter is 21 and she can sit on my lap. Because I couldn't with my parents. Not that it was their fault, just that's the way things were. I didn't have that connection. We had that break. And it's kind of difficult to carry on as if the break didn't happen. So.
Was your mother, was she very touchy-feely as a mother? Was she very affectionate?
I don't think she was a touchy-feely type, but I think my sisters have the advantage of not being apart from my mom. So I think they connected with her in a different way than I could. I think she just saw herself as mom. Okay, I was away for this time, but she was still mom to me. But for me, it was slightly different. So there are liberties that you take with familiarity. And I didn't have certain familiarities with my mother, so I didn't have those certain liberties. But my sisters, because they had those familiarities that I didn't have. Or, yeah, that's the best way to put it.
What about your dad? How was he? Was he affectionate? Was he?
My parents, I don't see them as huggers. They're not huggers. They're lovely people. I enjoy my dad's humor. There's a certain humor, and I think we connect at a certain level, and I'm very comfortable talking to him now. Even back then, I think I leaned more towards my dad than I did to my mom. Mom and we had lots of issues, you know, and maybe that's just because mothers and daughters have issues, and, you know, I sort of like saw my dad as a comfort, a place of refuge. I even remember the one time I had a stupid argument with mom, and I remember listening at it when we were back in Zimbabwe. We were actually in Greendale, so I was in high school, and we had a blowout with mom, and I heard her and dad talking in the bedroom, and my father was sort of like saying, no, you don't have to do that, and my mom was like, you let her get away with this, you let her do this. And my dad was like, but you don't have to be like that, you know. So I felt in a sense like I had an ally, or a place of non-judgment, a bit of comfort in my dad, but not that he was a hugger or a touchy-feely. No, they weren't that.
In retrospect, what is it that you feel now that you can look back, now that you've replaced your mother in a sense? What was it that you feel that you needed that your parents did not supply?
I don't think children should be left behind, even if it makes sense. I think don't go, or go with and struggle with and have the sacrifice. The relationship I actually have with Nicole now, it's funny because with my daughter, she's confident. She doesn't know what it's like not to have a mother, or not to have a mother that supports. She's had me 24/7, so she doesn't know any different. But with Nicole, I actually even connect with her at a different level, because she's a child who lost her parents very young. And there are issues that I can see a mile off. And I think I see that because there are things that I identify with, you know, like maybe feel like you're not good enough, or got to stand last in the queue and let everybody else have their thing, and then you can go up. There are those things that I think you just get because you share a familiar background. And it's funny because not funny, because we're just talking. I was thinking about it, even with my husband, and he was saying to me, but look at you, because I've got Natalie, who's sort of like, I always tease that she adopted me as her mom, and her parents are both late, and she's a big girl, she's 28 years old, and I didn't know her parents that well, but she stayed with us, and we were good friends, if you can put it that way, and she has a lot of history as well, a lot of issues regarding parenting and so forth. But so she just called me mom. I'm her mom, and that was it. I always say she adopted me as her mother, and we've connected ever since. And then there's Marlon, who's Nicole's brother, but they share the same father, but not the same mom, and we're very close. And a few other members of the family who've shared a lost parent. And, you know, my husband was saying to me, you know why the connection that you have with all of these children is the loss of a parent. And this is before I lost any of my parents. You know, so I think that has a lot to do with being the child that was left behind. So the issues that come out of there that make me connect with other kids that have that deficiency. So that's what I got from that.
So do you think that you've corrected the wrongs that you feel?
I hope so. I don't know. I'd like to think, you know, I filled a gap that was in my life. I filled it in the. I hope so. Yeah.
Have you forgiven your parents?
I don't know that I've forgiven, but that I can understand why it happened, and I can live with it, you know. But I would say don't do that. It's not worth it.
One of the emotions, or an emotion that I'm sure a person, a child would have felt, is whether or not they're loved or feel worthy. Do you recall having feelings of your worthiness or your capability to be loved as a child?
All the time.
How do you think that's, as an adult, do you feel that you're worthy to be loved?
I think that in my family, with my husband and with my kids, it's unconditional. It's not an issue. I think that we're a house that has lots of challenges, but love is not one of them. I hope that's what, because that's what we've tried to live. Yeah. I think love is important. I think that it comes with acceptance. You know, if no matter how many times you mess up, you know, if you feel like you've got a place where you be like, okay, get up, you know, dust up, let's go. It's not a biggie. It's a done deal. If you've got a place that can do that, and you grow up in an environment that does that, that's pretty. I think that's. I read, I don't know who said it. They said a child born in a palace or under a tree, if this child is wanted, loved, and cherished even before they're born, it doesn't matter what comes up against them. This child has a confidence that comes from that feeling of, I was wanted. I mean, even if it's you're breaking a leaf and sharing a leaf, it's not the material things. It's how you feel about, it's how the people who have you feel about you. And if you're worth it, like, you know, you wouldn't even know that we're poor if you're in an environment that you feel is supportive. You wouldn't even think that you're in a palace if you're in an environment that is not materialistic, but it's supportive. And if that child is sent out into the world, they will thrive, they will do well. But a child that's not wanted, whether it's born in a palace or under a tree, will always have the same issues, you know, the same struggles and the same uncertainties. And that child will not thrive. Yeah.
If your parents would have taken you to the UK, and that gap was not there, and you had access to your parents 24/7 like your siblings had,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that your life's decisions would have changed at all?
No doubt. No doubt.
What do you think would have been different?
I think I'd have been more fierce. I think I'd have been more certain of myself, of the things that I want. I think I wouldn't be a 50-year-old woman struggling now to do my writing, which is my passion, because I think somebody would have said to me, you know, you do this really well. And when I look back, all the threads are there. I was very good. I think I wrote my first book in a handwritten when I was 13, 14. The passion was always there. But I didn't have the confidence. I couldn't identify it until very late that that's what I do. And I think if I had somebody who knew me well enough and who cared well enough and had enough insight in my life to see that this is where it's going, things could have been different.
What encourages you?
I think now I've got my own self-worth. I value myself. I think I'm a bit gentler and kinder to me. And I understand myself better. So that's fine. And I'm good with myself. Like, if I can laugh at myself, and I actually enjoy my own company. I'm not looking for validation. I'm not looking for love anymore. I'm good with where I am and what I can do. On a day that I do it, I do it. On a day that I don't do it, I don't kick myself too hard, or sometimes I do kick myself. I can do that with myself and be fine. So,